where we live stream with Atlanta Film Festival and a filmmaker from the Atlanta Film Festival coming up in September. We will get into talking with our guest, Morgan Ingari, right? All the way up in Brooklyn. Brooklyn's in the house. First up, you know how we do it. We talk a little bit about what's going on with Atlanta Film Festival. You all know you need to go to the, oh, look, I have it on Instagram too, so you might be hearing that. Look, I'm going to turn it down. There we go. All right. So, go to atlantafilmfestival.com, find out what's going on. Oh, yeah, I got it over here too. There we go. Find out what's going on. Definitely, we want you to think about membership with Atlanta Film Society. With Atlanta Film Society, you get discounts on all types of, all types of the badges, all types of classes, educational opportunities, and it's really a great opportunity to support local film also with your membership. So please consider that. 2-year memberships are online and available right now. The festival has been moved to September, so make sure you keep up on that. We are still accepting applications for screeners. So the deadline is looming. It's July 1st. So make sure that you get your application in if you want to watch films and that's your job, that's your gig, man. To watch films and help direct where we go with next year's festival. So if you're into films, check it out online. Plenty of classes coming up, plenty of things. Go to the website. All right. So we want to get started right now. We've got a wonderful writer and director, filmmaker Morgan Ingari, and her film is Milkwater. It will be showing at the festival for again in September. Yes, everyone's been listening, right? So we're going to show the trailer now, though, right? So we're going to check out the trailer, and then we're going to come back and talk with Morgan.
You know how when you're out drunk with friends and someone's like, oh, we should all go camping, and another person is like, yeah. And then you wake up the next morning with the idea that just totally lost its magic and it never ends up happening?
What?
I'm thinking of becoming a surrogate.
A surrogate what?
Like mother.
For who?
That guy we met at the bar the other night, Roger.
Have you been to Thigh High?
Yes, the gay bar.
That's my bar.
We have PBR, picklebacks, and Sunset Surprise.
Ooh, what's the Sunset Surprise?
It's a surprise that looks like a sunset.
I feel like I can do something good and real for him, now.
Never have I ever shown up at a stranger's drag show.
Would we call me a stranger? I'm but a spinsterly old maid who has yet to use these plentiful hips for a single babe.
Are you serious?
George! I'm pregnant. What are you even talking about? This is insane.
Somebody woke up on the wrong ear of the dingo.
And
Okay, that is not a real idiom. I don't believe anything you say anymore.
So after this 4 or 5 months and it's done?
No, I think I'll be more like a non-denominational godparent, like a not religious to spiritual parent.
I can tell you the sex today if you want to know.
Oh my God, wonderful.
No, I don't really want to know. You are incapable of listening unless you're told exactly what you want to hear.
Hello, what are you doing here?
I was just stopping by on my way home from work. I wanted to ask you about...
Now is not a good time. I am allowed to have a life that doesn't involve you.
So I'm just your surrogate? Do you ever feel like you've already experienced the most intense version of every emotion you'll ever feel?
All right. And we're back. So, we watched the movie last night, my husband and I, and we really liked it. So,
I can't wait so much.
I can't wait to talk about this. First, let's find out a little bit about you and your background, and how you got to Brooklyn.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
I'm from the Boston area originally, and I think I've wanted to go into film since I was a kid. My first present I asked for every Christmas was a video camera, and then I think I browbeat all of my friends and family members into making short films with me at every available holiday gathering. And then I ended up at Tisch when as a freshman in 2009. And yeah, just have never left New York. And was able to get this feature finished about, I guess, 5 years, 6 years after graduating.
Mm-hmm. So were you, did you come from an artistic family?
I definitely
Which isn't bad for a filmmaker, right?
No,
right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I certainly have a dad, an artist, musician, hippie dad turned corporate guy, but his first love was music. He lived in California and was in a band for like a decade. And he still plays music. He still plays in a band. I play guitar. He taught me how to play guitar. So, and then his family is very musical, very creative. So there's some artists in the family for sure.
Okay. And so you get to New York, you're from Boston, so it's not really, a big difference with regards to, it's a big city, even though it's New York,
Yeah.
So what were some of the things that stood out to you once you got into school and realized, okay, now I really need to be focused on this versus just, I think I want to do this, or,
Totally. I mean, I was from a pretty small town in Massachusetts, close to the city, but the city itself, I don't think was as overwhelming to me as being in a school like NYU, which is just so huge, and you really have to go create your own community. And I had a very close-knit group of friends in high school. I worked as a camp counselor for a really long time. So I was coming from these like very tight-knit, supportive groups of people, and I was very, I think, depressed and overwhelmed my freshman year at college because it was so hard to like find and create that community for yourself. And the way that the film program works, your freshman year is a lot of kind of gen ed classes and much bigger lectures. And then sophomore year, you start getting into smaller cohorts and actually, start working on films. And I absolutely love that. I crewed on so many upperclassmen's movies because that felt a lot more like community. Like, you're sleeping on someone's grandparents' floor in Ohio for 9 days making a short film. I definitely always say it's like paying a lot of money to have a job. Like I mean, your social life is your work. It's definitely not a typical college experience in that way. Like our class days were like 10 hours long. And then if you're working on a set, you're working 12-hour days, just like you would on any other set. But I'm not someone who thinks film school is necessary to get into film, but as a writer director, I feel like it was definitely a good crash course. And in being like, do you love this enough to work these hours this closely with people who you sometimes love and sometimes do not?
Don't. Yeah. And then add lack of sleep to that equation. Exactly, and that is just the powder keg. What were some of the first things you did when you were a kid? Like, what were some of the first projects you put together, and what would like your first technology
totally. Well, I was the kid who really would try hard to be able to do a video project instead of whatever had actually been assigned. And like, I think I thought it was less work because I had fun with it. But I remember my dad coming into our kitchen because I had like a VHS monitor. And then I had it hooked up to the video camera with, like the red, white, and yellow cord. Finding it and then pressing record on the TV onto a VHS tape at the same time to like edit it on the TV. And he was like, this is like what you're doing instead of just writing the essay. Like, I just cannot possibly understand why this is less work. And I was like, I like this.
Yeah, I did audiovisual stuff for like 20 years off and on here. Yeah. And it was funny because I remembered in 7th grade, I built a video projector, like from a shoebox.
Oh, wow.
Like, you know what I mean? Like a light bulb.
Yeah, absolutely.
All that. And I'm like,
so cool.
I guess I have always been into this stuff. Right?
That's amazing. I'm not a very techie person. Like I also tried to make a lot of stop motion videos, but on a video camera, like on a camcorder, there's no way to take a still picture. So it's a lot of like 2-second recordings of like a Barbie on a string floating through the air, like But
now you could take that footage and give it to some 12-year-old and they'll make like this amazing
something way better. Yeah.
Like, that is an app on it, you just use it with the filter.
I know.
God, I remember back in college, we had like the old lighting things, and like we literally would have to like pull the levers like manually. Now it's like a button,
Oh yeah.
So, okay. So let's talk a little bit about once you got out of college. What was it like once you got out with your dreams and then was pushed out to the real world? Did NYU prepare you for that? Or did maybe your peers or anything prepare you for that?
I mean, I think the biggest thing that I got from going to NYU is the network. Like my friends and have helped me get, I think, every job that I had. My first job out of college was working as the head writer for like a boutique production agency that a friend started. We did a lot of like branded content and online material. And so that was like very kind of sleek copy oriented, which was, that's not what I had studied in college at all. But it was fun to create something with friends. And then I ended up being the head writer for a humor and satire website, which was a lot of fun, but not film oriented at all, and directing branded content in the meantime. And then I assistant directed in college and a little bit out of college. So I would say, I think in some ways it prepared me well, in some ways less so. Like I think there's always room for improvement in educational institutions in many ways. I think something that is missing that I hope that maybe they've created in the meantime is indie filmmaking. Like truly, how do you make a movie for under $200,000, under $300,000? Like what are the workarounds? How does the tax work? Do you stay SAG compliant? Things like that, my amazing producer Candace is so adept with, but a lot of it was us really figuring stuff out on our own when we made this movie.
So it seems like that is the challenge. And that's where, back to your point, that do you really need film school to be a filmmaker? And, as an actor, writer, and stuff like that, I don't either. But
yeah,
you do go to college for those connections. Like that
exactly
is one of the things. And being able to say you went to Tisch School of the Arts means something,
Yeah.
But it doesn't discredit those who didn't go to, these schools.
No, not at all. I mean, so many of the people I work with now, like I think the connections are just having one way in. I work with plenty of people now that are connected to the NYU network who didn't go to NYU, and they're as much a part of that network as anyone who did go to that school. Like, and I think at least how I operated in school, like I wasn't trying to like go out and make connections who could like financially help me later, which like, I don't know, maybe I should have been, but I feel like
we all wish we did that.
I know, but like I ended up with a really, really amazing support network of people who are invested in each other and in each other's careers. And like this movie never would have friends who are like willing to show up and be extras for a day, or like people who are very talented DPs who are willing to come and like swing AC for a day because we all try to help each other out when we can.
Right. So what is, we were talking a little bit earlier before we came online about how things are changing now with regards to policies in New York and legislation for independent filmmakers. What is the talk? It's pretty new, I'm assuming. You said it's pretty current. Yeah. So what is the talk amongst, because I guess New York people are known for thinking like, we can do everything here in New York. We don't need to go anywhere. Everything you ever need is here in New York, right?
Yeah.
What is the talk about Georgia? Like, do you guys talk about Georgia, or is that an option that people even think about shooting in Georgia?
Yeah, and honestly, I think tax incentives dictate a lot of where people end up shooting. Obviously, Atlanta has been so prominent in the film world in the past 5 years, and certainly before that, but in terms of mainstream content lately. And I think that the diversity of the landscape, the shootable days are like very appealing. Like New York, if you're trying to shoot exteriors, you're pretty limited by the weather. Which, obviously Atlanta is very hot, but I think you have probably more shootable days. But I think Atlanta is very much on the, like, in the mainstream cultural lexicon about where to go shoot. I'd say it's always in like the very, very short list of cities people are talking about.
Yeah, it seems like we've been having challenges in Georgia because so much of the money and so many things have gone to the studios that have come here, and it's been great. It's getting a lot of work, but then it's taking equipment, it's taking a lot of resources from independent filmmakers that have been here all along, and so it's been kind of a hindrance for the independent filmmaker. A crew, available crews, people that I'd like to, but I'm booked on this, right?
Yeah, I mean,
So,
I was
oh,
just
go
gonna
ahead.
say we even ran into that for permitting. You know, like if a larger show gets a permit for that street, even if you have a permit after them, if the people on the street are so pissed off at that larger show for setting up lights, for setting up hadads, for setting up grip trucks, for making noise and taking up parking spaces, and complain to the city can revoke like your permit to shoot after. Like we had permits taken away because much larger television shows had come in right before us and annoyed everyone so much.
Right. It's like there's 7 of us, right? Like,
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, we're not
only 10 of us.
doing that. We have like, 1 truck and like 8 people.
You wouldn't even know we were here. We brought
Exactly.
Bagels, right? We brought bagels. Right?
Exactly.
But it seems now in a corona, COVID, and look, you know what I mean? I don't really know how big budget. Again, I'm on The Walking Dead. I'll be 100 extras at any given time.
Like how's that gonna happen for a while?
Right. It's gonna be all CGI, right? How do you think the independent filmmaker can really jump on this opportunity right now to just capitalize on the fact that things are going small?
Totally. I think before COVID was a big advocate for writing for your resources, like I think that if you want to succeed as an indie director, and, certainly I'm not the expert on this, but where I see people fail is having eyes that are much too big for their stomachs, budgets, and abilities. Like, I think you need to really pick and choose the like set pieces that you get married to and the like locations that you get married to and the huge production elements that you get married to, and instead like say, okay, yeah, this one thing is very important to me and that's what we're going to go for. And otherwise, like, is there a bar that I already know I have access to? Does it need to be a club? Like, can this take place in a space with 8 extras instead of 50? How could that be better? And at least even engaging in that writing exercise and being willing to challenge yourself to see a scene that you are totally in love with differently for feasibility of shooting is, I think, like something everyone should do for themselves.
Okay. So let's talk about Milkwater. All right. And it's really about a relationship that develops between 2 people as a result of a whim one night, that turns to a surrogacy relationship. How did this story come to you?
Yeah, so this was actually the first feature I ever wrote in college, but it was extremely different. It was about a woman who ends up being a surrogate for a couple, and then the couple dies, and she has to figure out what to do. And then I left it on a shelf for a really long time and came back to it as an adult because the idea of surrogacy has always been really fascinating to me. And then I started doing research, and it's like ended up realizing that the contracts for surrogacies are incredibly ironclad, and like if that ever were to happen, there are like 7 different things that you sign about who would take the baby and what would happen next. And I was like, I don't really want to write a legal drama for my first feature. So then I started trying to think of ways in which 2 people could get into a surrogate relationship, not through an agency, but also not being very close friends, because the idea of like a close friend relationship falling apart to me over that felt just like too sad and kind of tragic. And so I then started thinking, like, I'm a queer person. As a queer person, I feel like how you create family is not a given. And there are many ways to do it, but there's kind of no set roadmap. And so when I started looking at it through that lens, I started thinking about, well, who could these 2 people be who find each other, who connect in this way and decide that this is kind of their best option to both get something they think they want.
So how was the casting? Because I really love the cast. Your lead is fabulous. She's just really awesome. Tell me about how that went with the cast.
Thank you. Yeah, Molly is so fantastic. Patrick is as well. I mean, I loved our whole cast. Molly was our first cast. A friend of mine, Lauren Cheribali, who's a writer and director in LA, was the script coordinator on that season of Transparent. And she has a great eye for casting. So I was sending the script out to friends and asking for any thoughts, any advice. And she was like, I just worked with this actress named Molly Bernard, and I had seen her in Transparent and a bit in Younger. And she was like, she's just such a talent. Her star's on the rise. She's so versatile in terms of comedy and dramatic chops. And this movie really requires both. And so she was like, I recommend you go watch Younger and think about it. And I did. And Molly was kind of different than who I had initially envisioned for Milo. And the more I watched of her, the more I was like, this is way better. Like, she just brings so much nuance, and she's one of those rare actors where you can see every feeling she's having on her face. Like, if we were ever stuck in the editing room, I could just dig through her cut footage and cut to her reaction shot to like let us know what we were supposed to be feeling or thinking.
Mm-hmm. And Patrick, of course, I was like,
yes, okay, Patrick is so wonderful. And I mean, I know him from a million things. Like, obviously, I was obsessed with Galaxy Quest as a child.
Right.
He's been in so many wonderful things. But I thought that Patrick held up to Molly really well in a way that I believed their back and forth. I didn't ever want to feel like Milo was completely steamrolling Roger. And I also feel like the dialogue is so fast that I really needed two people who could give it and take it back to each other. And Patrick is so adept at that.
Yeah. It really seemed like, how did you see once they started acting, how that relationship, did it change, or how was it, how you initially saw it when you wrote it? And how did their performances evolve?
Completely. Well, I think, and Molly brought this to, I think when I had initially written Milo, I had envisioned her as being someone who very much flies by the seat of her pants and is just like crashing from one moment into the next one. And Molly had done a lot of work on the character and came to me and was like, I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think that she is making intentional decisions. Like, there is an internal calculus to what she's doing. The decisions might not be like the best ones or in the best service of herself, but she thinks she's making active, positive choices for her life. So that was like the first big kind of change to my direction of Milo that I really loved. And then also, I think that I didn't even completely see it until we were really down the road of shooting, but I feel like the two of them struck up this balance between like kind of a romance and also kind of a paternal child thing, and also kind of just like, you know, kismet, two souls who really get each other. And the paternal element was one that I kind of always hoped was there, but never wanted it to be creepy, and never wanted it to dominate. And I feel like they really struck the balance of lacing that throughout.
Right, because, and I don't want to give away plot points or anything, but there was this thing of, they both seemed like they were missing a family unit, or they were missing some type of connection with people that they may have once had. And through this surrogacy, they bounded that connection, but it was just such a gray kind of relationship of, are we friends, or is this a business thing?
Completely,
or is this,
Well, and I think I'm glad that comes across, because it was important to me that, like, they are both yearning for, I think Molly and I talked a lot, like, I think Milo desperately wants to be the most important person to someone. She doesn't have any biological family left, really. Her found family is moving on and, you know, developing well and creating their own meaningful relationships. And I think that really throws her into a tailspin of like, well, who do I mean the most to? And for Roger, I think he's kind of been like lonely for so long, and not in a like deeply sad way, but just like, I think he has accepted some degree of isolation. And then he has someone who comes and throws so much attention and preoccupation at him that he's not used to or hasn't had for a long time, that I think he really like basks in that. And the two of them, and at the outset, are making this decision in service of helping them both feel better about themselves, as opposed to for the sake of the decision that they're making.
Yeah. So how did certain, maybe, and not to, you know, we're not trying to put anybody on blast or anything, but maybe different relationships in your life, how did that affect where you went with the script?
Yeah, totally. Well, I think it's so funny. After the movie was available online for a little bit in the Brooklyn Film Festival. And so a lot of people got to watch it in that capacity. And the amount of emails I got that were like, I've heard you say that before. Like hearing Milo talks reminds me of you. And I'm like, oh God, like, please no. But I do think, like, to put myself on blast, I feel like she is kind of modeled after, like, I think I do have kind of this like ringleadery, like caution be damned part of me. And I think I have a better internal voice there about like keeping it in check. So I think a lot of it was like, well, what if I kind of like listened to my like lesser demons more than my better angels? Like, where does that spiral and where does that go? And then, I mean, George is based off a few people in my life, but I very much one of my best friends, Mo, and it was also like very important to me that he not fill this like cliche sassy gay best friend of a straight woman role. Like I really wanted to make sure that he had a textured life too, and that he had his own thoughts and wants and problems with her. So that was really important. Roger was like very much a figment of my imagination. I don't think I'd totally modeled him after anyone. Certainly my mom's worked for a very long time with AIDS Action Committee, so I grew up around a lot of 40 to 60-year-old gay men in Boston, and I'm sure that Roger is an homage to many
amalgamation.
Right? Yeah, totally.
Now it is Pride Month, in case you didn't know, so I can tell you that, right? Yeah, and what was interesting about this is it, aside from maybe a couple of people in Milo's life, she's really the only straight character. Mm-hmm. In the group and everything. And I thought that was an interesting juxtaposition. It's kind of like, yeah, you know, being the one black person, or how was that the flip that, you know, Milo, the straight person, was the one that was the minority in that situation, and her life revolved around other types of relationships. Totally. You know?
Yeah, I thought a lot about making Milo gay or queer. And the ultimate reason I decided not to is because I couldn't totally buy that she wouldn't have at least like thought about like queer family in a way that would make her a little bit more hesitant to enter into this. Like I thought that it was like kind of the naivete of being, and like the privilege of being the straight girl who's like never had to think about this before, that allows her to be like, oh yeah, sure, great.
Right.
And that also I think, and there are parts, yeah, I don't know how much of a part of the movie this is, but certainly it comes up in a fight with like, I think there's this tension between Milo like wanting credit for being a queer ally and also wanting to like use that to her advantage. Like she very much wants like the gay guys to think she's cool. And she also is super jealous of Noor's wife, but then wants Noor to be like really proud of her that she's like helping the gay community out. And so I wanted, just as part of Milo's character, I wanted that to show a little bit of her. Like she does try to be a good friend. She does desperately care about her friends, but she is a little bit ignorant in some ways about what it is actually like to be a queer person, which I think provides a good juxtaposition to Roger, who's been living it for his whole life.
Yeah. And that is kind of really what's going on a larger landscape racially right now, is us talking about, and I mean, generally speaking, white women who are wanting to seem like good people and completely do things demonstratively. You know, I'd use that word as another thing where it seems where, see, I'm good. See, I'm good.
I checked the ally box.
Right. I've checked off everything that I'm supposed to do, and now I want a badge. And, you know, that is something that's kind of difficult. I have a lot of white friends and a lot of white people in my life who, some we've been having these conversations for decades. Some they're just popping into my DMs now, like, hey, hi,
right, you know, all of this.
Right.
No.
No, but and there's part of me that's excited that they're finally wanting more and wanting to be more. But then there's another part of me that's just like, I don't know what you want me to do. Like, you know what I mean? You gotta own it
completely. Yeah, no, 100%. And I mean, I can only imagine being queer is obviously a very different experience, especially because it's largely an internal one. You know, it's not necessarily something you see or know about someone walking down the street, but that is, I think, part of allyship of that in terms of, and also like the commercialization of pride, et cetera, like is something that was on my mind when writing this. And it is, I mean, being echoed in volumes right now and what's going on.
Right. If I see Juneteenth stuff at Party City next year,
oh my God,
I'm like everything commercialization. If I see a Juneteenth aisle at Target,
oh God, I would like to think that's not going to happen, but of course it is. Like,
this is America, baby. We gonna market it, so put it out there, right? Well, what are some of the conversations that you're having in your communities about what's going on, again, in the larger scheme and this is happening during Pride Month. And
yeah, totally.
Like, well, we're not really getting a chance to do that, but it still is a part. The biggest debt is owed to Black people in America, but
yeah,
the gay people everywhere at all times,
for sure. But I think if this can be a reason for us to look at the ways in which Pride intersect with Black people and people of color, and the amount of Black trans women who have been murdered, treated so unjustly, left on the street, not given the help or resources that they need. The Black history of Pride is so important, and I think often gets left out of the rainbow flags and glitter and rah. And yeah, Pride is a celebration, but it also should be education, and it should be learning, and it should be reckoning. So I hope that this year is a year to amplify voices that we don't necessarily hear from or listen to when we normally celebrate Pride Month, because the two things are coinciding.
And it was a friend of mine. We've been friends, 20 years, over 20 years. And we were having a discussion about Juneteenth and white people celebrating Juneteenth. And is it the same as straight people celebrating Pride and going out to the Pride parades and everything? And for me, I was just like, yes, but I always know I'm an ally, and I know it's your parade. You know what I mean? I'm there to lift you up. And that's part of my fear when it becomes, okay, we're all here, but now is it a drinking game like Cinco de Mayo, or what's going on?
Exactly. Yeah. And to be that, there's such different identities, and I think to be celebrating something that you're not a part of, your first responsibility is to understand it and understand what you're celebrating and understand the history of it, and also not be sucking attention away from the people who actually get a chance to use this as a time to celebrate their own history.
Yeah. It's funny because I tell Russ, when I first got to Atlanta, I had never seen, and I came to Atlanta in the late 80s. I went to Spelman, and so there were over on campus lots of, transvestite men that I had never, I'm not going to say I never saw, because my great-grandmother was gay and lived with Lillian,
Totally.
I grew up knowing my mom had many, gay friends and everything. So it's not like I was some, cowpoke, oh my God. But I'd never seen a city, I'd never seen Black people in those types of positions, and I'd never, in just out. And I had never been supported. I felt so supported by the gay community. But I started, when I became an adult, started being was I the white girl that was oh my God, it's so cool to be with gay guys, this is so much fun, and not really getting, talking to friends, and they're no, my father kicked me out the house and dragged me down the street, or I'm what? And what?
Totally.
So,
for me as a queer person, I think, and I don't know how I could possibly compare this to the Black experience, because it's a life I haven't lived, but to me, there's a big difference between the umpteen women throwing their bachelorette parties at gay clubs, and there are so many of them in there that the gay people can't hang out there anymore. My straight friends who want to come to Pride with me genuinely to celebrate that movement, celebrate that experience, and celebrate my participation in it.
Right. So what are some of the things that you're thinking about moving forward? What kind of stories are you writing and thinking about?
Sure.
Going on.
So I'm hopefully directing a feature called Thruple, written by a friend of mine, Michael Dosher. And it's largely set, it goes in and out of the music scene in New York, but it's about a young gay man who ends up falling for a couple of older gay men, and the three of them kind of start to navigate this relationship. And I really like it because I think that it is Like, to me, I think representation is achieved by not like pedestalizing and instead examining different types of people and identities and orientations as a facet of who those people are and not the definition of who those people are. So like them said, all about what are the logistics of three people in a relationship, and are more like, what are the logistics of the people in this relationship, and in which ways does it work and in which ways does it not. So I'm really excited about that. And then I'm working on a pilot and a feature right now. And hoping to finish those up in the next year or so.
Oh, well, that sounds great. We've had so much time. Now, how have you?
No.
This is your first feature, right? Is this your first feature? So this is pretty cool coming out the gate with something like this. You know, how the festival circuit now is all totally different. How has this process been for you?
Yeah, it's been wild. I mean, our the post process was not that long, but the point at which we finished it, we had kind of missed the gate on festival applications last year. So we decided to really take our time, get a complete picture, lock, sound, color, etc. before we started applying to festivals. And then we had this awesome fest lined up. We were supposed to premiere at Atlanta because it was supposed to be at the end of May, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like, you think it was like those first 10 days of May or something like that?
Oh, yes.
I should know exactly, right? Yeah. I know the first week of May was definite. I don't know where
what is time.
The extra days. Yeah.
That was so exciting. And then I was very happy when you guys pushed instead of rescheduling. But I was sad about it at the beginning. I feel like the festival season is like a big catharsis for all independent filmmakers. You finally get to like enjoy this thing that you have like toiled over for, at least a year, and celebrate with people. So I was definitely sad about not getting to do that. But it's also cool that some of these festivals have had them online, so they've been available to more people to see, which is nice. I got to screen at a drive-in movie theater festival, which that was their solution. And that was cool. I got to drive over there with some friends and see it. And I'm also trying to keep things in perspective. Like, I'm very excited for Atlanta. It's not exactly the, so many fests have been canceled, that some that we've programmed in, that it's sad, but it's also like, it's kind of hard to feel sad for yourself right now. Like, and we're living in such an exciting moment in time that it's been energizing to get involved in bigger things and be like, I'm really proud of this movie. I hope we sell it. I hope it does well, but like, there are bigger, more important things to go get involved in right now.
Yeah. So you're up in New York. Tell us about how it's been for you. You guys are in phase 2 now, is it?
Yeah. Oh man. Well, I mean, we were talking about this a little bit before the live, but it was such a stark contrast from like being cloistered inside to like out on the street protesting with like 10,000, 50,000 people, which was great because the energy of like the moment and what everyone is fighting for, and also like being with people like in some kind of community again, was really powerful. And I think is part of what has led to the sustained marches and rallies and protests. But before that, we were pretty much inside. And
numbers have changed. So you guys are getting control of those numbers and everything after being the epicenter. Is there like, are you guys handing out gold stars? Like, look at us. We got those stuff down.
I hope it stays like that. I'm not gonna be counting my chickens until the numbers are down for a while.
I'm just like, is there gonna be like border patrol? Because New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut are like negative to all y'all coming in from your non-states. Why are people not wearing masks? Right? Why are people not wearing masks? I don't know. Okay, we have a question. How will COVID affect your filmmaking? How is this going to affect things for you?
Man, I've thought about that a lot. And especially as I've been trying to write, because this pilot and this feature I'm working on, I started way before this happened. And it feels pretty impossible to write a movie that's set in the future that doesn't acknowledge both this amazing groundswell of social activism happening, and also obviously COVID. Like, I don't know how you write that exists in this world 6 months from now, a year from now, 2 years from now without acknowledging it. But that's also really impossible because no one knows what anything looks like day to day. Like, I don't think I could write a restaurant scene for 6 months from now accurately because I have no idea if people will be wearing masks, if restaurants will be a thing, if people will be sitting inside the restaurant or outside the restaurant. So I think that's more how it will affect my writing. And then filmmaking, I mean, I think we discussed it. Like, I'm not a big, like, 200 person crowd director anyway. I'd rather, like, you know, spend my money on other stuff. But I think people are going to have to go back to this, this really, I don't know, kind of more guerrilla style, like smaller crews, smaller casts, smaller scale stories, which I love.
Mm-hmm. So again, this is your first feature. How did you raise the capital to do this?
Yeah, in the capital on the ground myself to bring on my initial team, and then we had an EP and an angel investor come on later.
So okay, and you get the angel investor, but you still had to have some type of presentation for them and everything. This is your this is your first time out. What were the things? What were some of the points that you think are essential for new people too?
Totally, I think having a budget is like a very, very like. Having a complete working budget. Like, if you needed to go out and make the movie tomorrow, this is the budget that you're working from, not an approximation of what a budget could look like. Have your budget. And I also think understanding the finance waterfall of back-end points is really important. Being able to talk to investors about what they're putting in and when they're getting money back and how they're getting money back. And also understanding how to allocate back-end points so that you don't give and promise so many away at the beginning that you don't have chunks of points to use in smart ways down the road. Like, I think someone gave me the advice that, like, giving away 1 or 2 back-end points is like, it's tempting to give away a couple back-end points or 1 back-end point to a lot of people, but it's helpful to save them so that you can actually use them as an incentive to get people to put money in later. Because on an indie, 1 back-end point, you know, it's just kind of a toss-up as to whether that's going to turn into any substantial amount of money for an investor.
Now, where did you get that information? Did you get that in school? Did you learn that stuff in school, or how did you learn that?
No, I mean, that came from talking to friends who had already created features. And also Candace has produced a couple of features before. So she had at least had those conversations before, which was very, very helpful. I was glad that she had this experience and we weren't flying blind. But that was definitely, I think, her experience on the ground and us just asking every person that we could for advice, right. Which I've tried to do after this. Like, I have tried to be very open and available for anyone who wants advice about the feature making process, because it's hard to get reliable information.
Now, I do want to ask you, in reaching back to younger filmmakers, especially female filmmakers, but before we do that, just a little plug. Atlanta Film Festival, Atlanta Film Society does have a class coming up on July the 5th. Indie Film Development Intensive. Complete your investor materials, lookbook, funding, and distribution plan, and pitch in weeks. So, hey, we're right here. The place for filmmakers.
That's amazing.
Okay?
I genuinely wish I had taken that.
Well, you know, we learn all that. And what's great now, like, Atlanta Film Festival is always offering education. But what has been great about this time is that all of these virtual opportunities to learn from people in other states and other, you know what I mean, other areas. Yeah. Many people. I'm teaching me and my Morehouse brother he's a location manager. We're teaching like a little mini filmmaking camp for students, and they're getting awesome stuff, and we're just doing it from the house. You know what I mean?
That's so cool.
So kids are having opportunities to take all types of classes. People are having opportunities to take classes. So look around and really know that right now things are available. People are accessible in ways that were not before, you know? But let's talk about how you can reach back and what are the things you do. Because I can see people around, I don't know exactly how old you are, but when you're young and you're kind of in it and you think you're at the beginning, you think that I've found a lot of people who are still in that imposter zone, or, you know, where they feel like,
totally,
well, I'm going to do my thing. But there's going to be filmmakers who are in school now, who are in high school, college, who look to you as that's where I'm trying to get to.
Yeah.
So how do you think you can connect with those people?
I mean, like I said, anyone can find me on Instagram, DM me. I'm always down for advice. I'm always down to hear anyone out talk. But I also think like the best thing you can do is like people talk about filmmaking as being a competitive industry. And like it is in some ways, but I see it as like a very social industry, and it can be a really wonderful industry. Like form connections with people you actually care about, you actually like, and then go help them. Like not because they can maybe help you later, but because you are forming relationships with them, you are forming bonds. And if you can create a network of people who aren't like, tit for tat counting favor for favor, but just always kind of down to help each other out, I think you'll go so much further in your career. And I'd say also be intentional about the crews that you put together. Like besides for our wonderful sound guys, every department head we had was a woman on Milkwater. And which wasn't, I set out for gender parity in the crew, and we ended up with that because those were the best people for the job. But also like it was as important to me to put together qualified people as it was for me to put together a team that I thought would gel and work well together. And I think that led to so much more production value, so much more of the work showing up on screen because people felt, I think, and I hope, respected, and they liked working together. And I don't think anyone felt like it was a pissing contest. And like that was the vibe I was really trying to create on set. So that, and I guess don't be afraid to give people a chance. If you think someone is a talented artist, if you think that they can learn, if you think that they're passionate, then that might be more important than 10 years of experience in the film and television industry. There were a couple people on Milkwater who had never done their role in a feature before, but I felt like they knew their field well, and they really wanted to do a feature, and they had wonderful artistic ideas. And like, it's like, I would always kind of rather take a chance on someone who's enthusiastic than be scared to do that.
Yeah, it's really important. The point you make about relationships is really one of the most important. There's so many things where you might be building relationship now that it'll be 20 years before that person, I've known someone for years. We were working on something and a project in development. And that person just at this time is just like, I'll do this for you. We've known each other 20 years. Totally. I'm in a position to help. And you do things because it's not because you want something in return. You really need to do all you can to solve problems for other people.
Completely.
And maybe you didn't go to NYU, you didn't go somewhere, but you can join an organization. You can, again, Atlanta Film Festival always needs volunteers. You know what I mean? I don't know what the deal is right now since everything's kind of online, but
and I mean, if you're a great PA on set and you show interest, like I know so many people who started PAing and like a year later were doing the job that they wanted to do on set.
Right. And follow up with people. You can meet people. Granted, right now it's kind of harder to meet people.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know what's going on right now, really. Right?
It won't go on forever, though.
Yeah, it won't. It just feels like it. No, but okay. So you literally just moved. You know what I mean?
Yesterday.
It is fun. I'm assuming the rest of the day includes, I don't know, a bath, some wine, and a sleep mask, maybe.
So much furniture assembly.
Well, I really enjoyed our talk and everything. It was great. I enjoyed the movie so much. I look forward
Thank
to
you so much.
That premiering here in Atlanta. I think it'll be a great audience and great market for it here too as well. And hopefully we'll get to meet you down here. When you're in town.
My plan is to come.
What's up? There we go. Let's make it happen. And I don't think we have any other questions. Any other questions? I don't think so. Morgan, thank you. You've been wonderful.
Thanks so
good
much.
luck out there in phase 2. We're in phase 18 or something down here. I was talking to my cousin in New York. Yeah. Thanks again. Again, we've got in the background, you don't see them, but Justice, Krupa, Kayvon, they are handling things, holding it down. Yes. Tonight was the first night we were on Instagram. So we, the little things we're just working through, but we're there for you this time. And just thank you to them because they're making it all happen. We've got YouTube, Facebook, Instagram all going at the same time, and we're like on Skype, actually. So everything going on. They're making it work. Thank you so much, you guys. Thank you for tuning in. We'll be back here next week, 7 o'clock. Thank you.